Welcome back to This Random Journey. Today we're going to be working on a wire ornament. I have never made a wire ornament like I'm going to be making for you today. And so this is going to kind of be a trial and error, but I hope you enjoy it. So far I have a template that I have just drawn on a grid paper, and I have all my tools that I plan on using on the table here, and I'm just going to form this main wire into the shape that I have created on my paper, and you will need 6 of these sections made. The wire I am using here, that it is just some black wire that I got on sale. I'll throw a picture up of this particular wire. I bought it a long time ago. It's 20 gauge. And like I said, it's just something that I had because I had found it on sale. So we have our basic form, and we're just going to cut this wire even, so that basically you're just making the form, and then you'll just kind of shape it and make those two cut edges come together. So there is one down, and we will need to make 5 more of those particular shapes. So I'm just going to continue on and finish making all 6 of these. We've now completed all 6 of our main forms for each part of the ornament, and we're going to begin making what I'm going to call the center for each one of these pieces. So we're just going to take that same black wire, and we're going to use our rounded pliers and basically making like a zigzag pattern. So you're just going to take out a half turn. If you can see what I'm doing here, half turn, rotate it half, and then do it again and again and again, until you get a pretty long piece, and you're going to be wrapping this around that main piece we just made. We've now completed a pretty long chain of that zigzag pattern. This is what it looks like, and we're just going to make sure we straighten and get that, looking really nice, get it flattened out really good so that it's nice and just symmetrical looking, so that we can now going to wrap it around the main piece that we made previously. We're going to take just some floral wire. You can get this in the floral section at a craft store, or I think they even sell it at Walmart. And this is going to be a tricky part. Always getting a wrap started, a wire wrap started, is the trickiest part. At least it is for me. So getting the wire in here and then just going to wrap it about 3 times to get it started. And I'll zoom in here in just a second so that you can better see how I'm going to wrap this. I took off a good arm span of wire, and you really need all of that by the time you get to the other side. So make sure it's a full arm span of wire that you cut off. I also quickly want to note to make sure you leave a small tail of wire on both ends, because you're going to need that for attaching pieces later on. I went ahead and adjusted the camera angle, so hopefully you can get a better view of how to wire wrap this. Basically, we're going to wrap 3 times on the main stem, and then we're going to do a 1 loose wrap to the next section. So you're going to do 3 where you're connecting the 2 together to the main stem, and then 1 just on the main stem loosely, and I'll show you. I'm going to bring it closer for you guys, so hopefully you can understand what I'm trying to explain. And you're just going to continue that all the way around this particular shape. Before we get too far wrapping this, I want to also note that we are starting on the side that is not cut. Just starting on the side that's not cut, and I will show you what to do once we get to the side that we do have a cut in it. And you notice that the cut is in the middle of the leaf shape that we kind of have here, and that's for a reason as well. It'll give it more stability, and you'll understand more once you see how we wrap this. Here's the close-up of how I am wrapping this. So you're going to do the main wire and your zigzag wire 3 times wrapped, so it'll be a tight wrap. So there's 1, 2, and the 3rd time here in a second. There it is. And then we're going to do a what I call a loose wrap, and basically you're just going to space your wrap out and do 1, and then you're going to go to the second one and do the 3 wraps again. Now as you're doing this, you want to make sure that those 3 wraps are tight, otherwise it's going to look sloppy, and who wants a sloppy looking ornament? So if you need to, manipulate the wire with your pliers like I'm doing here. You can use the tip of it, or you can pinch them, whatever you need to do to make it come together and look really nice. And just continue that around the entirety of the shape. We have now made it to the other side of our shape, and we are where the spot we have cut is. And so I'm just wrapping this the best I can all the way up to that cut mark. And then I'm going to hold those 2 pieces together and make it as even as possible. You don't want it to be uneven. And then you're going to wrap it just like you was this whole time from the other side. So, but it's going to be tricky, and it's going to take a little bit more effort to keep it together. It might try to pop out on you. Just keep it even and just continue on wrapping. We have now made it all the way around our shape, and we have leftover of the zigzag wire. So basically we're just going to take our little snippers, and we are going to first snip off the starter because there was a little excess there. Make sure to press that down with the pliers, and then we're going to snip off this larger excess wire, and we can actually use some of those for the center part that we're getting ready to do. And here is a quick look at what we have made so far. We have our tail, which is going to be very important for attaching pieces together. And this is the basic shape, and you're going to just repeat that 5 more times. So like I said in the beginning, we're going to use that same zigzag pattern for the center. And because I didn't have a very good video of it earlier, I thought I would re-show you how to kind of do this, making sure that you keep it flat, and if you need to, use your pliers to flatten your zigzags out. So basically it's just taking your rounded pliers, and you're going to slide it in there and do a half turn. So a half turn. And then you're going to remove, put it back in, and another half turn. And you're just gonna continue doing that over and over again until you get a long enough piece for your center. You also would maybe have leftover, like I did, from the longer one that went around the edge, and that's perfectly fine to use if they're long enough. So I'm going to stop here and just show you, you're going to be placing this right like this. So I'm not quite long enough, need to go a little bit longer, but you're going to get the idea. It's going to get attached, and that's going to be our center. Now it's just not going to be a plain center. We're going to actually be wire wrapping this center before we attach it to our main petal here, or I'm calling it a petal because it looks like a petal to me, but our main section here. So yeah, just make sure it's long enough. A little extra long is fine. We can clip it off later, but you definitely don't want it too short. Now we have all of our main shape formed, and they look like this, and you need 6 of them. And then you're going to make 6 of your center zigzags. And then this is the next step. We're going to wire wrap and add some beads to that center. So that's what I'm going to be showing you next, is how to wrap that with the beads. You're going to pick one of the zigzags that you've made, and you can see this one is all kinds of crazy. It needs to be straightened out, and so you can use your pliers, you can just use your hands to manipulate it, but just making sure that it's nice and straight and looking nice and flat, because we want this to be in the best shape possible before we start wire wrapping it. So you can see that I've gotten it all straightened out and flattened, and we can begin to wire wrap. I'm going to use the same floral wire that I used previously. You want to use definitely a full arm span plus a little bit more for this part of the wire wrapping, because we're going to be doing a coil wrap all the way up it, plus adding in those beads. You don't want to run out of wire, but it's not the end of the world if you do. I did run out on the first one I made, and I just added in, and you can't even tell. So don't stress out about it. If you run out, just add it in, and it won't be a big deal. I recommend leaving a tail at the beginning of your wrap and at the end of your wrap, so that you have something in case we need to use it to attach later on, which you probably will. I forgot to do that on a couple of them, and I regretted it later on. So make sure you just leave a tail. It never hurts to have extra wire to work with later on, because you never know if you might need that for attaching or making a piece stronger. And again, it's getting this first couple wraps going that is always the hardest, at least for me. So just getting that started, and we're just going to do a solid coil, and then at the peak of each one of these zigzags, we're going to be adding in 3 of these gold beads, and it really just gives it kind of a pretty look instead of just being all wire. You'll see it turns out really pretty. I am adding on 3 of those gold beads, and I'm just going to take them all the way down the long wire that I have here at the beginning. We are now going to go the opposite direction that we were wrapping with. Once we get our beads on there, we're going to pull it really tight, get them where they're even and on the very tip of that point, and we're going to continue wrapping, but now in the opposite direction. And I will try to get closer so you guys can see what I mean here in just a second. But basically, you're just going to be wrapping one way, put the beads on, and then go back the opposite direction. And you're going to coil that really tight. And if you need to, get your pliers and use your pliers. You can see I use my fingernail quite often, and I have really thin nails. And so I have all kinds of jaggedy nails from doing wire. So I suggest using the pliers. They're a little bit better for your fingers than what I was doing there. Continue that coil all the way to the next peak, and then you're going to add on 3 beads, and you're going to do the same thing over and over all the way to the end. Here is what it will look like after we complete this next step. Basically, all we're going to be doing is adding in the center we just made into the center of that piece we made in the beginning. So we have our two pieces. We are just going to make sure that we figure out which side is the back. So you see here, this will be the back, and then this will be the front. So the zigzag pattern will be the front, whatever's on top. So our base is the basic shape. The zigzag that goes all the way around will be our front. On the center, this is the back, so you can see there's more black, and then on the front there's more silver, and that's how you can tell. And so you're going to just kind of push forward the beads here so that it kind of gives it a little bit of a kind of caved in effect on the zigzag. Not too much, just subtle. And it's going to kind of make it pop out just a little bit and give it a little bit more dimension. And we're going to run our finger and just make this kind of have a subtle arch. This arch will be defined later on even more, but let's just go ahead and give it an arch. And then we will probably do the same thing with our main petal looking thing. We're just going to give it a little bit of an arch as we do this, but for now just arch that center thing. And then we're going to use our tail. This is why the tails are so important. This one was really too short, so I have to use my pliers, and it just made it super tricky. So I really suggest leaving a good tail if you can on all your pieces. You will thank me later, trust me. So basically just you're going to wrap that end and secure it really nice and snug. Just a few times should do it. Then we're going to move down to the opposite end, and you can see this one is a little bit too long. We made it a little bit too long. Try to avoid doing that just because it makes it a little bit more complicated and a little bit more bulky, which I don't really like the look of. But if you do make it too long, not a big deal. Just find where the beads are, the closest bead to the end is, and snip there so that you're not having to snip through all the big coil. And then just go from there, wrap on top of that coil that you have already made. Like I said, it's going to make it more bulky, so try to avoid doing that. And this is the last wrap here, last couple wraps here, just securing that down. And you're just going to repeat this for the rest of the sections that we have. And you're going to kind of shape this and give it a little bit of an arch. Don't worry too much about giving it too much of an arch, just a little arch will do just fine. Here's a look at what the next step will be. We're going to be adding on these wires here on the side and making this V shape. If you can see, it's attached at the very tip, and then it comes up 5 zigzags up and kind of loops back down. So we're going to just take that same black wire. We're going to take a section of it here, and we're just going to fold it in half and make a really sharp point using our pliers. We're going to bend that now apart just to make a deep V, and we're going to repeat that with another wire for the opposite side of our shape. So now we have 2 V shapes. The first V shape we're going to place right here, the tips together. We're going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we're going to put the ends into that 5th zigzag. We're going to form the V shape to where it isn't hidden behind our other shape. We're going to give it a little bit of a curve up just to be decorative. Make sure it's a smooth curve. You don't want a harsh line that kind of skews off to one side. You want it to look really smooth and nice. And then you're just going to kind of fold those other sides down so that will kind of be more secure. You're going to flip it over, and on that very tip, you're going to use that extra wire. Remember I said it would come in handy, and you're going to secure your tips together, just going around just a few times. And when you're done with that side, you're just going to repeat the exact same thing on the other side. There should be roughly 5 of those little loops. If you don't have 5 and you're the size of your ornament you want to like scale or do different, that's fine. Just it's about halfway. That's all you need to know, halfway, and you're good. And here we go. We just finished that step. This is what it should look like at this point. It is now time to start attaching these bigger sections together. So you're going to take the 2 wires that we just made out of our V that is looping down, and we're going to start wire wrapping. And I was showing you there, you just come down a little ways because you want it to be able to spread to give us the shape we want later on. So we're going to just do a tight coil around both of these wires that are coming down. The length should be extra long here, that way you have plenty of wire to work with later. Make sure your 2 sections are even. It's going to be very important later on because you're basically putting your pieces all together and making it all come together, and you want it to be nice and even and straight. Getting this coil started is going to be the hardest part, and also you want to, as you coil this and get it really tight coiled, you want to smash it with your pliers as you go too, to give it a real nice clean look. And now we're going to, now that we got that wire wrapped, we are going to work on the center right here, this cute little flower. And I'm going to just show you, it's really simple. You just take a short piece of wire, and I'm just going to use the floral wire again. It doesn't have to be a very big wire at all. Of course, the longer it is, the more wire you will have to work with, the easier it may be, but not too long. I'm just going to get 7 beads on my wire here. And the size of your flower will depend on how many beads you use. So I thought 7 beads was a good petal size for the size of the ornament that I am making. So I did 7 beads. I folded my wire in half, pinched the beads together, and did a quick twist. And it wasn't like a whole bunch of twists, it was just like one little twist here. And then I put on 7 more beads, and I continued doing that to make 4 petals all together. And here's what the next step will look like. It is this, putting this little flower on. So you take the 2 sections and your little flower and separate the little wires that you have sticking off of the end. I would leave them longer than I did because it made it a little tricky. Go diagonal with this. So I put one on one side, one on the other side in a diagonal manner. Then I flipped it over and just wire wrapped that wire around each of the sides that they were on. Then it's just a matter of turning it back over and kind of shaping that flower to make it look pretty. Clip any excess wire from that, and you'll be done with this step. Now we're going to join sections together. So here's after I have joined 2 sections of the 2 together, and then I'm going to take another 2 and join those as well. So now all of our sections are joined together, so it's one running line, and we're going to clip all this excess wire off because it really starts getting in the way. So here is our full line of our petals, as I've been calling them, and they're going to kind of come together like this because we're going to attach these last two sections together. It's going to form kind of a cylinder look. And then these wires we're going to bend out, that are our excess wires. We're going to bend them out, and then we're going to actually clip them shorter here in just a little bit. So now I have joined those two sections together, the last two sections together, and it has formed our cylinder. And we're just going to begin kind of shaping this into a curved position. All of the sections need to be curved. All of the wire here needs to be curved into just a nice subtle curve. Think about the shape you're wanting this to end up as. You're going to just basically be curving this, and so after some time you're going to basically have almost a ball, and this is what it's going to look like. So we're really getting close here. At this point it can kind of sit up on its own, and you can just kind of see it coming together, which is pretty exciting. And just continue kind of forming it until it looks just so. Now it's time to cut off these main stems here, and I'm just going to go to the tip of the petal and snip it right there. That'll give me plenty of extra wire to curl under, which you'll understand here in a minute. So just go around and clip all of those wires, making sure they're all roughly the same length. And then we're going to just use our rounded pliers here and curl them. And so we're going to curl them like such. You're going to try to keep them looking about the same, but if they're not exactly the same, it's not the end of the world. Just trying to get them to look similar. Then again, you're just going to kind of shape this. You're going to make it more of a V shape and get it looking symmetrical. Here's after I had completed all of the little curls and gotten them done and what it looked like. At this point, I was super excited because I could see it coming together, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, this is going to be a perfect ornament. And then everything started changing, and as you saw by the thumbnail, this didn't turn into an ornament. It was time to figure out the top of the ornament, and well, this is where everything started going wrong. I went ahead and made these just links of wire. I made 12 of them because there was 12 basically hooks that I needed to go on. You'll understand that in a second. So I was taking these little loops and I was putting them on what we're going to call now the pumpkin. We're putting it right here, and we're going to just use that floral wire again to attach that to this. And so you can kind of see where I started going wrong here. So yeah, basically the top didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to, and whenever I continued going in this direction instead of just stopping and redirecting, it made it look like a pumpkin. And so that's the direction I went with it, because I was pretty much over this ornament at this point. I was finished. I had spent hours and hours and hours on this thing, and so I was just kind of over it. And so we're wire wrapping this wire onto this section, excuse me, and just making sure it's tight. We're doing 3 wraps and then what I call loose wrap, which is basically just a quick wrap over to the next 3. And so we're getting this really nice and snug, of course, trying to make it look as nice as possible, even though I'm questioning myself at this point, but I haven't given up on the ornament thing. At this point in the video, I hadn't. It wasn't until I got all of these on that I gave up on the ornament. It was like, this is not working out the way I wanted it to. So I did the loose wrap, and now I'm doing the 3 more, and then we're going to do loose wraps all the way up the wire. And I actually changed this up. After I had done the first one, I started a length of the floral wire in the middle, and that way I had enough to go up both sides after doing the wraps at the bottom. So that is one thing I did change as I continued this process. And here's a quick look at what it looks like to do this loose wrap all the way up the wire. You're basically just wrapping in even intervals around the wire, and it just gives it kind of like a spiral effect going up the wire. Then you're just going to clip off the excess wire so it doesn't get in your way. And this is what it's going to look like. Now all of the sections are on, and we are going to somehow bend these together and try to get it even. And then we're going to bend them at a 90-degree angle. So basically we want to try to bring these up to the center evenly as possible. It's very difficult. And then bend them at a 90-degree angle so that we can wire wrap them together. And here it is after we've gotten them all bent at that angle, and as you can see here, it's looking like a pumpkin. I mean, there's no denying this looks like a pumpkin. At this point, I'm like, this thing's a pumpkin. It's not an ornament anymore, it's a pumpkin. So this is where I started struggling with the idea of this actually being an ornament, and switched gears to pumpkin. So I just secured this with just a piece of wire that I had, scrap wire, so it wouldn't be frailing around, so that I could wire wrap these around each other. And so I'm going to take these ones that are sticking up here and going to just begin wrapping them around each other. And I actually thought this looked really neat as I was doing it. The more you get, the bigger the center is going to be, and I don't know, I thought it looked kind of cool. So like I said, at this point I was pretty frustrated because it was no longer an ornament and I wanted an ornament. So I accidentally skipped this next step, which was basically just curling under some of those wires that was sticking up to make it look like a pumpkin now, because I wanted it to be a pumpkin. And so here it is. This is the pumpkin, all done. It has a place where you can put a candle under it, so I decided I would put this over a candle to show you what it would look like. It really is pretty whenever the light from the candle sparkles in the beads, so that really gives it a good look. And I hope you guys like this video. I know it was supposed to be an ornament, it was a pumpkin, but I think it turned out to look beautiful. It took forever. If you want to try this, great. Let me know how it goes for you down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.